So today we have a special guest from HFCL. We are here in the series 1 of mapping of underground assets with respect to telecom, optical fibers, oil and gas pipelines, and in this we have Mr. Nilesh Kote, Vice President HFCL with us. Welcome, Mr. Nilesh.
Welcome, Ravi.
So, Mr. Nilesh, as we are doing this series with the digital mapping of underground assets with respect to telecom, and we understand that the new project is coming for BharatNet and laying of more than 800,000 kilometers of fiber optics. How do you see this as a need for bore logging and GIS mapping, which I believe has been mandated in tender document?
Yeah. So, thanks, Rajiv. Actually, the problem which BBNL is facing presently in phase 1 and 2, their network, all the network which they have laid, more than 2.5 lakh kilometers of execution plus around 6 lakh kilometers of fiber they have laid, and that is having very little digitalization. Means like that the thought of digitalization has come later on after the execution, which has created a big problem for them to do a lot of activities related to the operations and maintenance of the network, even billings, finding out where exactly the network is. So that is completely in chaos. So now in phase 3, they have learned from their mistakes in phase 1 and 2. Now they have made it mandatory with a very strict compliances towards the deviation, the compliances to the GIS, compliances even for taking HDD boring logs, the trench which we are doing, so we have to get videography, photography. So they are now going for the evidence and digitalization of the assets in a very structured way in phase 3. So that's what the change which I see in phase 1 and phase 2 versus the phase 3 what BSNL is doing.
So, Mr. Nilesh, what I believe the bore logging and your GIS mapping will go hand in hand, because there is a limited right of way where each utilities are being put, because telecom also goes along with your other utilities like city gas, sewer, water, and of course many other utilities, and multiple layers of telecom operators are there. So more and more fiber is being put in the ground. The congestion is increasing. So how do you relate this, that how you are going to get benefit out of this when this project goes on?
So when you do HDD, you do bore plan. So now because of the absence of the data of the existing utilities available, I was in European countries earlier, and when we were doing bore planning there, they used to give us the website, whatever the digital asset information website which was there, has the bore plan for every utility laid, so that you can create your bore plan based on the digitalization data available there, so you don't cut any other fiber or disturb any assets which already there in the ground. Now, this information is not there in India specifically, neither in city limits or neither in the national long distance routes. So the corridor which usually is there around the roads is limited. And every utility has to go through that corridor.
Correct.
So if you know the depth, if you know the bore plan of the existing utilities, you can plan your bore plan more efficiently with less disruption to the existing utilities which are already laid. And this helps us out typically if it is a real-time bore plan, where it gives you the real-time information. It helps you to understand the productivity, exactly the asset in the ground from the horizontal pitch. You can find out where exactly the asset is laying. So this, I think, should be now be made mandatory for all the assets which are going to get laid further in any of the corridor, which whether it's intracity, in the city limits or with the national long distance, because considering the infrastructure growth which is happening in India, all the people are going to lay their assets there within that corridor itself. So whether it's a gas pipeline, drainages, your the telecom,
Correct.
electrical, whatever new infrastructure which is going to get laid. So this will help us to lay our new infrastructure without disturbing the existing infrastructure.
Existing ones. So it's what I understand from the tender document that you also got to maintain this fiber
Yeah.
for next 10 years, which is a long period.
Yeah.
So this is probably going to help you with
Yeah.
with the maintenance, with the exact location of the GIS, and then
Yeah.
what layers of utilities are being laid below the ground.
Yeah. So in terms of random, it makes the effort of the team. So in specifically in random, the essence is the time.
Correct.
Time to repair the network. So if you know exactly where it is lying, so you can tell exactly to the repair team where exactly the asset is. So their efforts to the major time spent by the repair team is to identify where the asset
Turnaround
is.
time.
Yeah, so it's called the mean time to repair.
Correct.
And if you see the mean time to repair, around 50% of the time is wasted in actually finding out
Identification. Yeah.
where exactly the asset is. Now, if you know exactly the asset from a geographical perspective by this digitalization method, then you don't have to spend much more time in finding or localizing the fault. So there it will help us out in the random, and even when you have to shift something because of the existing infrastructure getting new infrastructure
Correct.
getting laid on that corridor or something, if you have to lay, then you exactly know where your assets are, and that assets can be actually saved. In terms new operators are coming to lay anything, we can avoid the cuts if we actually tell them where exactly is our asset inside the ground. So that helps.
So you mean to say that the sharing of data,
Yeah.
that's more important.
Right.
How do you take this with the authorities, the municipal corporations or the national highway authorities? How do you take your sharing or their sharing?
Yeah.
Vice
So
versa.
specifically, what we observed in developed countries is that the whole assets digitalization is with the authorities.
Correct.
So specifically, everybody has to go to the authority to get a permission to lay any new infrastructure within that corridor, and if the digitalized data of each operator is available, whosoever has laid it in that corridor is available with the authorities, that makes their decision for the authorities very easy, which corridor has to be allotted, and even for the new operator to lay. So if he has the existing data of all the utilities available with a single authority, or maybe with a subscription based website, so people can pay and look into that data. So management of data is also easy for the authorities to maintain, because they have to also, maybe they can give to third party to maintain all this data, and the sanity of the data can be also maintained. If there is change in the route or something has happened to the existing structure, that can go to that agency, and then they will maintain a sanitized data for all the utilities which are laid. So this has to be done by the authorities. Specifically, each one is more inclined to save his infrastructure.
Correct.
If somebody is laying new.
So, sir, any suggestions for the operators who are with you or who are going all alongside with you? Any message for them that how to proceed forward so that because this is a big project.
Yeah.
And if not done now, then what will happen?
So anyway, for the BBNL phase 3 it's mandatory, and so what I'm telling about all the operators and all the other utility providers, we have to go with digitalization. It may be enhancing your cost, maybe very very little, but that information which is there, which is taken one time, helps everybody for their future planning, even for the operator who itself is laying there, that will help in their operations and maintenance, and in a long term it saves a lot of cost, repair cost and other thing which happens on a daily basis. So what I encourage even in our project, we are trying to encourage the vendors to use this technology of digitalization of asset. So there are two aspects. One is the asset digitalization in terms of where exactly it is laying, but the underground utilities needs additional information where exactly it is inside the ground. So on the ground and in the ground, both the informations has to be available. So I will ask every operator to use this technology which is there, to make sure that we have all the asset information available in some digital repository.
Thanks, Mr. Nilesh. Thanks you for a valuable time and the suggestions you have given to the other people. I hope they try to follow the things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raju.
Good morning. With the first series of digital mapping of underground assets with respect to oil and gas pipelines, fiber optics, sewerage, water, and power, we have Mr. Vishal Unmat, Director Bluegrass Technologies Private Limited. The company has been pioneer in laying of oil and gas pipelines, slurry pipelines, water pipelines, and they are here with us to discuss about the digitalization and mapping of underground assets. Welcome, Mr. Vishal Unmat.
Hi, good morning.
So, Mr. Vishal, you have been in this industry for last 25 years, and the company is engaged in India and overseas for the laying of oil and gas pipelines and slurry pipelines. How do you see the digitalization and mapping of underground assets? Of course, the pipelines and fiber, whatever you lay below the ground is an asset. How do you look into that? Because I could see that the mapping of the underground assets is minimal.
If you ask me very frankly, like there's very bleak information available, like when you go and lay any underground utility along the highway or any other place. The only thing is like most of the pipelines these days, like the right of way having issues with the private landowners, the clients prefer to lay the lines along the highway, the corridors which are owned by National Highway.
Okay.
So there is a dedicated corridor which the national NHAI has, and there are various water pipelines, optical fibers, gas pipelines, city gas pipelines, sewers, all are laid, and like the new projects are coming up.
Correct.
And the underground traffic is being increased in those corridors. And once we go with the new project laying the pipelines over there, like there's hardly any information available from NHAI or any other authority who owns the utility.
So you mean to say whenever you go to lay the fresh pipelines, you don't find the maps below the ground or the GIS coordinates for the existing utilities below the ground?
No, there's no information available. The only thing what we can do is like we can make trial pits and guesstimate basically like at what depth the pipelines are, or some information given to us by the owners, and that is what we have to take into consideration. And with the factor of safety, like then we design our profile, maybe we go deeper or sideways to lay the utility or lay the new pipeline.
So this could be probably the risk factor involved in this is probably higher when you don't know where the existing utilities
Yeah,
are.
definitely the risk is there. And to mitigate that risk, like we have to be doubly sure, and we spend a lot of time on entry exit side both, making a trial pit and verifying like whatever existing utilities are. There are times like when we are informed by one service provider like they have a utility, and when we make a trial pit, like we have one or two utilities more which are available there, and some cables and some utilities are dead also, which are not being used, but they still exist, but there's nobody to tell us whether they are on or off.
If I have to talk to you specific to city gas pipelines where the ROWs are limited in the urban areas, how do you go forward? Have you encountered any challenges? You have been working in the Mumbai area, which is very congested, and a lot of city gas and a lot of utilities have been going underground. How you find that? How you counter that?
See,
challenge?
there are challenges with the existing utilities, what we face now when we go and lay a new pipeline, but there are challenges in future also, because whatever city gas is being laid,
Okay.
like it is basically in urban areas in the cities inside,
Okay.
giving all the connections. The only issue is like in future, if these utilities are not mapped properly,
Okay.
when a next service provider comes and he wants to lay his own utility or a cable or a pipeline for any purpose. If you talk about telecom also, there are various service providers.
Correct.
So there's not one. So if they come into the picture and they want to lay their upgrade the existing utility also, like from 4G to 5G, they have to lay additional cable.
Correct.
Then for city gas also, if the information is not available, then it becomes difficult and more riskier, because those are live lines available in the urban areas, and if they are not mapped properly, then we are looking at disaster in future.
So if I have to go forward asking you that you are laying your own pipes, you usually map them and you submit all the data to the authorities. But is this data available anywhere for others to look into?
See, the only thing is like there has to be a central body. Like if you are laying a city gas pipeline in a city, like that corridor, the owner corridor basically gives permissions to 5 different authorities. So that has to be the owner to have all the information. What we do now is if we go and seek a permission from PWD, they'll tell us like these are the utilities available. You have to go and verify it yourself.
Verify.
There's no information available as such, and like these authorities basically need to have that data bank, and that whole thing has to be digitized, where it can be shared with the upcoming contractor or a company which has to lay the utility. And they should know the corridor also while giving the permission, where and which segment is available where the permission has to be given to lay the pipeline. Now when we go right now, like they give us a corridor where the existing utilities are already available, so a contractor or a client has to look into it, making trial pits where the pipeline or a fiber has to be laid. So there's no specified area available.
So if this data is combined with the GIS mapping, geographical information system, where you can get the exact coordinates and near coordinates, so that while walking on the top of the surface, you can identify, yes, there is a utility below the ground. What do you think? If this could be an added advantage?
If this GIS information is available with the authorities, then the life is much more easier, and the risk of laying future utilities also is like lesser. Like you don't carry that risk of damaging those utilities which are existing already over there, because you have the proper information available. Here we don't have information as on date where we go and work. So we carry a risk of damaging those utilities, and like it takes more time for execution also, because once you go at site, if the information is available, you can plan it accordingly. This time, like we have to go and make hit and trial pits and verify the existing utilities. And then approach the authorities also, because if there's an existing line, like we need to seek permission from them to cross that also. So there are delays in that case also. If information is available, then the permissions and everything is smoother for execution.
Any message to the upcoming companies how they should move forward, looking into the perspective of mapping?
The only suggestion what I can give is like the authorities which are the owners who give the permissions to lay the utilities into their corridor, they should form a central body where they keep all the data bank of whichever permissions they are providing to the service providers for oil, gas pipelines, water pipelines, optical fibers, sewers. They should have a combined data with all the utilities at what depth, with proper mapping available. So in future when they give a permission, like at least like those existing utilities are identified. Same is in the case of NHAI also. Major pipelines cross country, because of the landowner and private acquisition of land. The companies prefer to lay the pipelines along the highway. Now along the highway, again with the NHAI, you have optical fiber cables, you have water pipelines, you have other gas pipelines also which are laid by other oil and gas companies. So you are laying parallel to that. So those existing utilities are already available. Same with NHAI also, like they also need to form a central unit where they should have all the information available, digitized, and that would be helpful in future. If it's not available as on date, I would suggest like they should start having it now, because if they record and make those things available with the time frame, like in future, the risk would be much more lesser, and like these pipelines would be safer also, because along the highway and in the cities also, like live pipelines are a big risk otherwise.
Thank you, Mr. Vishal, for your valuable inputs and giving us valuable time. Thank you.
Thank you.